Welcome to Connection Over a Cup. I'm Jennifer Brown, coffee enthusiast and community builder. Every episode, I'll cut through the noise by sharing unfiltered stories from everyday people on Connection, how to spark it, where to find it, and how to stay inspired. If you've ever felt lonely, you're in the right place. Grab your cup of chapter coffee, lean in, and let's get connected. Hi, Tinamarie. Thank you so much for joining. For everyone that's listening, this is Tinamarie Fuller, and she is my guest today on Connection Over a Cup. And she's going to be sharing with us about community, but specifically community with oneself. So please welcome Tinamarie. And Tinamarie, please do share a little bit about yourself with our listeners.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited about Chapter Coffee. And, you and I have a lot of alignment in our passion for community and connection and slowing down our ways of being so that we can cultivate both. So that's something I'm very passionate about. I have a background in mindfulness and meditation and yoga. And so that's why I'm here.
Let me tell you, I can already hear it. So the difference between my presence, which is obviously not centered and rooted in being present in the moment, is very different than yours. You should be on a Calm app. Honestly, I could listen to you all day. And I think our listeners will also agree you have a very soothing presence. And I'm so excited to get into this topic with you. So I ask everyone this: what is your daily coffee ritual? Because part of this podcast is really, how would I connect with you, my friend, in real life? If we were sitting together, I like to have shared experiences, coffee being one of them. So what is your coffee ritual?
So to be honest, coffee is fairly new in my life as a regular ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the last several years I've spent mornings drinking matcha.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a break and I'm passionately in love with coffee. So my ritual is this, and it's new. I approach it in a similar way that I did matcha, which is, it's, this may sound a little bit odd, but it's kind of like a prayer for me. So when I come to, my hand grinder, so I open a brand new bag of coffee and I hover my nose just inside the bag and I take a big inhale, and without fail, my mind and attention go back to my childhood when my mother would make her, sorry mom, really crappy instant kind of coffee. But
By today's standards, yes.
Right, by today's standards. But she would make this coffee and I was, I thought of it as this magical grown up sort of thing to do. So I would observe her. And the part that really lit me up when I was a kid is that she would put heaping teaspoons of sugar in her coffee. So I would, she would turn away to go do something and I would take a sip. And so I remember watching her, wanting to be like her in a lot of ways, watching this ritual and then sneaking little sips of this magical drink.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a lot of sugar in it. So, there's that hit that you get. So when I smell the coffee, when I'm opening it, I remember that every morning. And so, then I use a hand grinder.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the slow process of grinding the beans by hand. And I use a French press. So my process is, quite slow. And when I'm pouring the hot water into my French press, I put my hand under the glass and I do a swirl, like I get it wet. I guess it's called a bloom.
Yes,
I'm not
that's
a
right.
coffee person.
No,
So
you're right.
I do the bloom thing, and I usually infuse this brew with an intention, and often it's a very loving intention, and I then pour the rest of the water in, and I do a 3.5 minute steep at that point, and then pour all my other goodies in it, which I'm not a real coffee drinker and that I don't drink it black,
I don't think there is anything as such as a real coffee drinker. I know that is hot debate in the third wave coffee culture, but coffee should be accessible and it's really whatever you enjoy. So, whatever you put in your coffee, that is how you like it. You are absolutely a coffee drinker in
It's
my book.
yummy. It's so yummy the way I make it. And I love handmade ceramic mugs. They're my favorite to hold for my coffee in the morning. Yeah. So uh, it feels very sacred. It really does feel like a prayer, all of these remembrances and, um, I feel a sense of wonder, like aliveness and wonder over the process of making the coffee and when I'm taking sips. It's quite a magical
It
thing.
sure can be. I know most of us are thinking, I don't know if I connect with my coffee like that on a regular basis. I know I'm thinking that. Like, I absolutely love to slow down
Mhm.
and have more of that presence of mind and really enjoy the process, especially smelling the beans. That for me is really key because to your point, it kind of starts the process of recognizing what I'm doing and choosing to participate in it and all of those things that you had talked about. But I think I could get better at doing that on a more regular basis versus just occasionally. But thank you for sharing your ritual. And I think many of us will now aspire to be a little bit more present when we are making our coffees. And again, that connection to maybe someone you used to make the coffee with, or if it takes you back to a certain time. It's like music in that way for me. You
Mm,
listen to, or I listen to a song and I can almost go to that chapter in my life. Coffee is very similar in that way too, where that smell brings me back to your point, childhood memories.
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into community with self. I really wanted and am so excited to have you because I think that you're very grounded in how to have community with oneself. I know you and I have talked in the past about nonviolent communication and just these really gentle ways that I've heard you speak about how you interact with yourself. And I can share that I'm not really great at that. And I can imagine many people out there are not great at necessarily knowing how to be kind to oneself. It's almost, at least from my opinion, I don't even think about it. But then when I do stop and think about it, especially the self criticism, I'm like, would I ever talk to a friend like that? I absolutely wouldn't. But it's so automatic on the part of self where I'm not present to catch it. It's almost insidious. And it's not just self criticism. I know many people that I've talked with and have asked them, kind of what is that internal dialogue or what is it with self where they would want kind of some guidance. It's perfectionism, so that self-critical component. Boundaries, that was a really interesting one that some people have shared with me, that they have these weak boundaries or lack of boundaries, which then allows others to behave in ways that they're not comfortable. Again, how do you create those boundaries in a healthy way? And I think that again is starting with self, respecting oneself. There's a lot tied up in there. And so I'm going to stop there and I'm going to let you take the floor. What does that mean for you first and foremost?
Well, this has been, as for most of us, a lifelong learning process and continues to be. I've learned a lot about how laughter lightens the heart and gives more spaciousness to the mind and a sense of softness and a more like just openness of presence in the body, what we feel in the nervous system. So I have taken to laughing at myself a great deal, like really and truly. I used to be someone who took myself pretty seriously. And when I was younger, if people would make fun of me, I would feel very sad about it. And now if people make fun of me, I think it's funny. Because I take myself less seriously. And I think I was able to get to a place of taking myself less seriously. And that doesn't mean I'm not a perfectionist. I do have some areas of my life where I am quite perfectionistic. And so I experience frustration where there's not quote unquote perfection. But what I brought into my own, what I invited into my mind is this notion of compassion, of curiosity and compassion. Everyone learns in different ways. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn in my body. So I started learning a lot about compassion through the practice of yoga and dance, freeform dance and meditation, and through body centered practices. So I started learning these practices of self care where I, I have personal gestures, like physical gestures that bring me, uh, that gift myself with. I feel loved when I created my favorite gestures for myself when I'm in when I'm in a state, when I notice I'm in a state of self-criticism. I put one hand on my heart and one hand on my belly, and I just breathe, and I feel into my physical being, because the criticism, the judgment, the fear that sometimes causes us to create or be over boundaried, perhaps. Boundaries are so important,
Mhm.
but sometimes we're over boundaried and then we prevent connection.
Mhm.
I I can create a sanctuary for myself when I have this personal gesture and I drop into a sense of feeling and sensation and notice the fear or the anxiety or the frustration that has me wanting to grip or contract in some way, because I'm holding so tightly to this thing I want to be in a certain way, whatever it is.
Or
And I
both.
just soften. Yeah, or
Run away.
bold, right. All the different ways that, the nervous system is triggered to keep ourselves safe. And so I start there. I start with noticing, I notice that I'm feeling anxious. I notice that I'm wanting this particular outcome in this circumstance. And it's okay that I'm wanting, of course, I'm human and I want things to work out a certain way. And it's important for me to note that it may not work out that way. And, so what is my process? And, how to surrender. I have different processes for surrender and just creating more space in my mind so that it's not replete with all of these mechanisms of control, or
Well,
needs
I
to
know
have
that
things a certain way.
people often will wonder, especially with listening to those who are experienced in centering themselves or connecting with themselves as you are. I know that oftentimes they are looking for the how, right? So when you're speaking, I'm hearing you and I'm thinking where I was maybe 10 years ago, where one, I couldn't even sense it in my body, right? So disconnected that I couldn't sense the anxiety, fear, anger, which, typically is a mask for another emotion, but I couldn't even feel it because I was so numb, disconnected, whatever you want to say. And
Hmm.
so even being able to recognize it was a feat that I didn't feel I could manage. So how do you, let's say you're talking to listeners who are listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's so advanced. I can't even imagine like putting a hand to my heart or centering myself through breath. Like I'm, a single parent or I'm, at this job that's super stressful. My boss expects me to work around the clock and, I'm commuting a long time and, add whatever life stressors because there are so many into that equation that you want. But how does someone who doesn't even know like where to begin, like is the I can't even feel the emotions within myself, how do you recommend that person get started?
A few things come into my mind. Where I started was with the word pause. Someone introduced the word pause to me, and I started to, and I've been a single mom for the better part of, I have a 27-year-old and a 17-year-old. And for the vast majority of those years, I've been a single mom.
And you're
And
centered, how does that happen?
practice, because I wasn't, and I'm not always. I'm certainly not always. It's coming back to this practice, and I use the word practice a lot. I think everything is practice,
Sure, yeah, I agree with you. It's commitment and it's practice.
and the person who taught me about the word pause invited me to find moments in the day when I'm willing to pause for 60 seconds. Just notice, just pause. Maybe I was washing dishes, to notice that I'm washing the dishes. Sometimes, so many times we do the mundane things without thinking. We're only thinking about the next thing or the problem we're trying to solve or the relationship we're trying to heal or whatever all of these things are going on in our minds, and we're not present with the steering wheel beneath our hands as we're driving down the road, and we don't even remember getting how we got to
Yes.
the house after,
Yes.
the hour-long drive in
Right.
traffic, whatever. So it's this it's a pause, and maybe some people have a hard time stopping. Maybe that's for some people, that creates a lot of anxiety to stop. Maybe it's bringing attention to only the very thing that we're doing. Like, what is the ground beneath our feet? We're standing. I'm using dishes because I think it's an easy example.
Right.
I can feel the ground beneath my feet. I can feel the water running over my hands. I can feel the dish, between in my grip. I'm feeling this, and I'm actually bringing, for myself, I have invited myself to enjoy the process. Now, I know that can be a little bit for some people, but when the option is like, I can enjoy the thing that's in front of me, or I can abhor it
Mhm.
and resist it. But the fact is, I'm engaged with it. And I would like to invite more joy and embracing the moment that exists in my life, because these are the moments that are our lives. And if we
Mhm.
bypass them, move through them quickly, or try to get through them so we can get to the next thing, then we're missing
Right.
our very
Right.
life.
Yes, exactly. We're so busy just going from one thing to another. To your point, we are missing life.
And so if I'm present with this process of being with this dish and cleaning
Mhm.
this dish,
Mhm.
then I I feel I feel my humanity. I feel my, I don't know what word to give it. I mean, I think for me, the word is essence. I feel the essence of what and who I am. It's not so much of the time we're functions, you
Yes.
know, we are a function of the things that we're trying to get through, to do and complete, or get past, beyond, because we don't want to be doing it. And so it does come back to sensation, physical sensation for me. Um, I am more aware of my breath. I try to bring more attention to I'm breathing, and when I bring an attention to my breath slows a little bit, gets a little bit deeper, and I can feel myself just drop into my own physical sense of being more, whether I'm doing the dishes or driving down the road or right now in this conversation with you. There's
It's
this.
interesting because you had mentioned you can choose to enjoy doing the dishes. We'll use the dish example to continue or not. And I think for me, it was really revolutionary, honestly, to think I had a choice in all matters. Right. And so I think, again, for those of us that are maybe starting from zero, almost the realization is for me was, but could be for those listening that are not sure where to begin. It's a realization like, hey, I'm choosing to be in this job. Now, I know everyone has bills to pay, and I'm not saying that everyone can walk away from their job if they want to, but I think there's some comfort in knowing that it was a choice to be in this job, or it's a choice to, park where I parked, or it's a choice to not go to the gym if that's my choice for the day versus oftentimes I feel so many of us default to blame. It feels better, right? It feels better to think that even though it really doesn't, but intellectually, I think that the mind can play tricks on you where you're thinking, if I can blame I can blame my boss or my misery at my job, or I can blame my boyfriend, my partner, husband, my wife, insert whomever for why my life is disappointing me. Or, I can blame my kid because I am now cash strapped and I can't, go on the vacations or buy the things that I want to buy. There's a lot of that thought process around how we live our lives and this assumption that we're not in control when I think for me it was very liberating to learn actually I am in control. That's the one thing I can control is me. And to your point, like I'm choosing to do something and it's not always pleasant, but for some reason it seems like that space allows me to feel just a little bit better. So almost, you know, again, for those out there that are just starting, it's almost just recognizing like I'm I really hate my job, but I'm choosing to be at this job. And there are reasons that I'm choosing to be at those jobs, whatever the job, whatever that may be. But again, I think that gives like a little bit of space. And I don't know, what do you think about ownership? Like, choices really. Is that
Mhm.
community with self? Is that allowing you to connect with yourself in a way that, again, you recognize your own empowerment? I guess is what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say.
Definitely. When you were speaking, what was coming to mind is um, meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose is an important part of our existence and our motives, you know, for doing the things that we do, right? So, and I'm not saying that's always the case. Sometimes, because of the culture we live in, that's a whole other conversation.
Right. That's the next podcast.
Make it challenging, but when I'm doing the dishes, when I can, my 17-year-old is an amazing young man. He's got such a good heart and he's such a good human. When I come to the sink, and last time I was at the sink was clear because I did all the dishes, and then I see, 11 dishes in the sink a few hours later. And,
Hmm.
you know, how does someone use 11 dishes in a few hours? Um, how easy would it have been to just take the one dish you use and,
Right.
I
Right.
do think that. I think that, how hard would it have been to blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, 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 blah,
Hmm.
blah. But what's important to me, what I find joy in having order and beauty in my space. That's important to me.
Hmm.
It's not as important to my son. It's
Hmm.
important to me. It's also important to me that I know how hard my son works at school, at his projects, stuff with the house that I don't like to have to do anything with. He
Hmm.
works hard at the things he works hard at, and I want to gift him. So I could say, "Hey, get your booty in here and do these dishes right now." And he could be like, "Mom, I'm da 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 da," right? And
Right.
not that we don't have those kinds of conversations, we do, but there's also an option for me to gift him. I know how hard he's working on the thing he's working on right now. So what would happen if I just did these dishes for me? And I know I'm not this earnest, and I'm not always this is not like I've got this wonderful heart and I do these good things all that's not, but at my best, this is what I choose. At my
Right.
best, I see it as an opportunity to gift him, to gift myself, and to practice presence, because doing dishes helps me get into, I wouldn't say a meditative state, but slows me down.
Hmm.
And I've cultivated a practice of dropping into my breath and my body and being with that practice over many years. So I'm gifting myself. So I find that where I can insert meaning and purpose into something I don't really want to do. I've been at a job before that was very difficult for me, where there were certain people who were challenging to work with, and I had to navigate that. And I may have had different ideology from the person I was, working with, and I had to, for my own sense of happiness and fulfillment and meaning and purpose and joy, um, make good out of my actions, right? Like, so what I brought to the table, I was bringing to the table uh, for myself, right? Like for the goodness of my own health and relationship with myself, to cultivate joy, to cultivate meaning and purpose, and a sense of acceptance. Acceptance is a really important part of finding happiness, I think, in
And do you feel
life.
like giving yourself permission to know what you like? So for example, a person knows what their preference is in a way community with self, because I think so many
Hmm.
of us don't even give ourselves permission to like the things we like, or to be the person that we are, because there is all of this external pressure to look a certain way, to have certain things, to behave a certain way. You name it, there's pressure out there that is essentially telling you, you can't you can't be you, meaning, you almost don't know who you are if you're letting all of that noise kind of creep into yourself.
Mhm.
So, would
Mhm.
you say like community with oneself really is acknowledging what your preference is and then obviously not inflicting that on others, but that in and of itself almost is something that individuals need to learn how to do, right? Like some people can do it naturally, but I think most of us, it's a practice. It's, well, what do I like? I
Mhm.
mean, I'm embarrassed to say for the longest time, I didn't ask myself those questions and I didn't even know the answers. And especially when I was younger, I like what that person, I like whatever um, was of the moment and not checking into to myself or with myself rather and saying, okay, do I like that? Is that my voice in my head or is that someone else's? Is that, society, culture, what have you? So I'm long-winded here, but do you find that community with self is actually knowing oneself, giving oneself permission to have those preferences? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, curiosity is, a value I hold. I value being curious about the world. I want to understand how other people think about things and how things work, and I'm curious about my relationship to nature and
Hmm.
to people in the world, and I continue at my 50s to be curious about myself and to find that there's a lot still to know about myself. And I think one challenge that we have is because we all understand the term self judgment and self criticism. And there's all this talk about self compassion, and there's this movement of self compassion because self judgment and self criticism is just such a pervasive way of thinking and being in our. I can't speak to other cultures. I can only speak to the one I am in. Certainly, our culture, comparison, competition, these kinds of things.
Hmm.
So even just getting to a place of feeling worthy of my own compassion, of being curious, right?
Hmm.
Because I can think of back to a time when I was younger when I would have thought, "Oh, I I wouldn't have valued being curious about myself because I didn't think enough of myself
Hmm.
to be curious about." I was so much more curious about what everyone else
Yes.
thought.
Yes.
So I think it's a really good point. It's important. And I think too, it's really important to surround ourselves to pay attention to the people that we're closest to and the people we confide in the most. Because the people who are most critical or most judgmental of perhaps themselves and others maybe aren't the people that we should be um, on the journey of curiosity about ourselves with.
It's interesting that you bring up that point though, because I feel that those around us are almost a reflection. And what do I mean by that? So when I was really in kind of that self-critical mode, I had a lot of people around me who were critical. Or if I was in a certain headspace, right, I could look around and see that those people who were kind of in my tribe were very similar. So if I was at one point in life, I was pretty angry, and I had others who were not necessarily angry towards me, but just had kind of that same issue. I don't really want to call it an issue, but just that experience that, they were angry as well for their own reasons. And so for me, oftentimes when I'm annoyed by the people who are in my circle, so my tribe, I try to think about, okay, I must possess that quality because it's irking me in this other person. And then that leads me to have some introspection with myself. And so kind of tying back to, for those who don't even know where to begin, I think for me, it was really helpful to look at those around me, notice what was irritating me about those individuals, and then look at myself and say, okay, do I have an area of opportunity around anger or, I'm hanging around a lot of people who value what other people think of them more than what they think of themselves. Is that a quality that I possess? And
Yeah.
it was.
That's certainly a self reflection, even as you're observing the people you choose to be closest to, and beginning that inquiry of what qualities about this person do I also exhibit. And I think it's important to reflect in that way. And I also think it's as a shining a light, like a light on the thing, um, and to be careful not to have that add to more criticism of self.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah, so I think I grew up a very sensitive, highly sensitive person, and I was told many times in my life as I was growing up, "You're so sensitive. I don't know how you're going to make it in the world." Um, I came to know over time that my sensitivity that I thought was such a great weakness was actually my greatest strength, as we often hear that's the case. And that's because I accepted and sunk into my ability to s- just be soft, to be the soft person that I am. Now, I had to grow to be a very resilient woman with a lot of capacity over the years. Had a lot of lessons, put myself in a good many circumstances that taught me some very difficult lessons. So having capacity for resilience is important. Um, the vocabulary around softening and surrender and spaciousness, these kinds of words are used pretty frequently. I can imagine that for people who are in very driven parts of society, those words may sound elusive
Right.
and
And
unattainable and
fall
maybe
flat.
undesirable. Um, but I think for me, I think what everyone can relate to is the nervous system drives everything that we do, the way that we do everything that we do. So if we are unaware that the nervous system is driving everything that we do, then we're just functioning out of an overactive nervous system because that's what our society produces.
Right.
So this softening and surrender thing came into being for me, the experience of that by learning to attend to my nervous system. And that's noticing that everybody knows stress, right?
Hmm.
Stress is it's a nervous system response. It's not just noise. It's not just like, oh yeah, I just feel stressed because I've got, and you list 10 things that are going on in your life.
Hmm.
It's not just noise. It's it's a signal. It's a call for attention to the
Right.
nervous system. So that's why I think it's important for people to find their own way of dropping in when we attend to these physical signs of contraction in the body.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and I think that's an entry point to the softening that the nervous system is really asking for. It's like, hello, I need some attention. That's why I'm showing you these signs. And we can work with those signs. It doesn't take knowing much at all. You don't even have to know yourself very well to be willing to pause and notice what's happening in the body in this very moment. You know,
If I've understood you correctly, first and foremost, just notice, okay, I'm
mhm,
feeling stressed, right? And instead of saying I am stressed because you are not the stress, but rather I'm feeling stressed. And then
mhm.
maybe trying to notice, okay, where is that stress in the body? And then where would one go from there?
I think for some people, movement is a way out of the frenetic chaos that happens in the mind to get into a, a place of more what I mean, I feel it as presence, here-ness, being here, right? Rather than in the mind, which
Hmm.
is not here. Most of what's in the mind is not what's happening
Right.
now unless
Right.
we're bringing attention to it. So just walking outside and taking a deep breath
Mhm.
Maybe there's a park one can walk to or drive to. If someone has a tree in their apartment complex or in their yard, they can just go stand beneath the tree or take a take a walk if that sounds like a silly thing to do, to take a walk.
Oh, it's impactful though, you're right. Just getting outside of the
Mhm.
environment can really give someone the space needed to just help calm down their nervous system. It might not
Mhm.
be the perfect science yet. It might be elusive, as you mentioned earlier, for them. They're not going to be able to be a master practitioner like you. But first thing is noticing, then to your point, movement's really key, getting outside. And I think that gives distance, if I've understood you correctly, from also the conversation in one's mind, right? Like what's that talk? If you get outside, I think you can have a little bit of space, and then that gives you the ability to kind of calm the nervous system. And then when you're a little bit more dropped into your body or calmer, I feel then you can actually start to notice more about like, huh, I was being really self-critical about X, or I was allowing maybe my boss to really stress me because of, X, Y, Z, or whatever that is. And so, all right, if I've understood you, we are going to notice. Then, well, if we're in the car, we can't go for a walk. I realize that. But maybe to your point, you kind of just relax, your grip around the steering wheel. If you're somewhere where you can access the outside, then we should be doing that. And then would you recommend, if that person's willing, maybe try out like a yoga, well, maybe not even a yoga class. Again, I'm trying to think of people who are just starting out. So maybe watching like a YouTube video on breath work or yoga for 5 minutes, like really starting small and then keeping that as a daily practice. Because I think commitment's key here. You won't notice changes right away. I think, what is it, 21 days to build a habit? But then after that period, checking in with themselves and seeing like, okay, do I feel more connected to myself? Do I feel like I know myself more? Do I feel like I can manage stress in the way that I can return back to my body, calm my nervous system down? Like, is that what you would recommend? Or is there anything that maybe I missed that you'd mentioned that you want the listeners to know in terms of, again, that community with self?
Yeah, I like those ideas, and I am in agreement with all those things, and I think that it's important to begin, if one doesn't already have a trusting relationship with oneself, to begin to learn how to trust oneself. And so that means um, trusting that you know what your body needs, even without a class. Like, if we can calm the nervous system a bit, then we have access to presence. We have access to connection with self, and we have access to connection with other people. But when um, when we're all what we're contracted and gripped for dear life inside our bodies and our minds, that's a barrier to connection with self and with other. So,
I'm curious, like what's on the horizon for you? You've been, doing the work that you've been sharing with me for a very long time. Are you going to continue kind of helping others with connecting with themselves, or is there something else that you're looking toward, either personally, professionally, anything that you want to share with me?
yeah. So, a couple things. A dear friend of mine who's a phenomenal acupuncturist and healer in Austin, um, among other things, we are going to, we both taught meditation in the past
Hmm.
and are both certified to teach and are very passionate about meditation. And we're going to start teaching at the corporate level together. And we'll start doing some group classes and private classes as well. But we're very interested in what we can bring in the way of connection with self, um, and a collaborative sense of connection to corporations and,
Hmm.
you know, greater joy and ease in those kinds of environments that
Yes.
are often conducive to the contraction that we've been
Yes.
talking about. So we're getting ready, we're preparing to do that together. I took a hiatus from teaching meditation for a couple of years. Uh, and also, something very new that I'm beginning. I learned how to throw pots on a wheel and have been doing some hand building and making mugs and cups and bowls and candle holders. And I found that it is, I mean, I have been a lover of dance and yoga for a very long time. Like, just my favorite things in the world to do are yoga and dance.
Mhm.
And I would say now finding pottery, it's right there with those experiences and practices for me. Pure joy brings me in a sense of, awareness and presence and creativity, and possibility that I didn't know before. And so I love the shapes, I love the feel and the sensation in the process. So I'm starting a business. It's called Cup Love. So yeah, I'm launching that very,
Oh
very
my
soon.
goodness. Well, you'd mentioned in the beginning about your coffee ritual how you really like to use ceramic mugs for the most part in terms of what you like to drink out of. And now you are actually going to be the artist creating that experience for others. And if I'm not overstepping, I would love for you to create a custom mug for Chapter Coffee. I personally would love to drink out of one of your designs, and I would absolutely like to showcase your work on my website. So if you are willing, I know that listeners would be very excited to see, kind of what you produce as well. And so I could keep everyone posted with, your news and updates about when your creations are going to go live. I would absolutely love to have you be part of Chapter Copy.
I'd be elated. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining Connection Over a Cup. It's the perfect marriage in my mind, Chapter Coffee and Cup Love. I mean, who could have thought it, but it's perfect.
Perfection. Yes.
So thank you again. And then if anyone has interest in your services for corporate or, I know you'd mentioned Cup Love is coming up online. I can include contact details in the comments of my video if that's okay with you.
Yes, that is
Perfect.
great.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Really enjoyed connecting with you. And I can't wait to have you on again after Cup Love goes live.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Remember, everybody, brew well and connect often.